It's been a while since I talked to you about my life on this podcast. I did a couple of episodes about where I talked about the elections, maybe 3 episodes. And obviously that's something that everybody's been thinking about and still thinking about, but it gets tiring to focus on that subject. So if you don't mind, to some of you, I know that there are some of you that like to hear about my life. I've been told from a couple of people that, yeah, man, you should talk about your daily life. We'd like to know what's going on in your life. Okay, so here it is. It's November the 17th right now. And the last episode that I talked about my life was called Schmooze. I don't know if that word is appropriate, but all the other words have been used. They've been used up by other people. So I'm still looking for a title for these kinds of episodes. Since then, since the last one, I played at a Dia de los Muertos party. Halloween happened, and then I just finished playing at an event for law enforcement, for like sheriffs in St. Augustine. Now, I don't know what kind of relationship you guys have with the police. I'm pretty sure there's a wide spectrum of relationships that could happen, from everything from seeing them in a very negative way, which I'm sure could be justified, and seeing them in a positive way, like if somebody just broke into your house and they saved you. So there's a wide spectrum of how you can see the police. As many of you know, but for those of you who don't, I'm a musician and I play like flamenco and Latin guitar mostly. That's what I get hired to play. Although I can play many different styles, and I've done soundtracks like film scores and that kind of thing. But anyhow, so most of my work is playing music in front of crowds. So that gives me a lot of opportunity to look at people. And I've been doing this for many years, and I study crowd movements and important figures, how they move through the crowd and all this kind of stuff. So I'm always sent home, so to speak, from my gigs, usually with something to think about that has nothing to do with music. And as you can imagine, I play in situations from hospitals, hospital rooms, to hospital groups, and I also play for fancy parties, and I play concerts, and I play festivals. You name it, I play it. But during this event for the sheriff's office, I was reminded of something, of how police officers have a certain look on their face. Not all of them. The rookies don't have it, I don't think. And I could be wrong about what I'm noticing here, but I don't think I am. I noticed that police officers' faces look like faces of people who've been brokenhearted, like humanity has broken their heart. And I suppose that I'm talking about police officers who have been in the police force for a number of years. They also sometimes have a look in their stare of maybe somebody who knows too much about people. I imagine their jobs are full of horrible situations. I'm sure they save cats from trees and things like that too, but I don't know how often that happens. So I can imagine that their jobs entail guns and blood and shootings and child molestations and child beating and wife beating and husband beating, domestic violence, drug abuse, neglect. In a nutshell, they see people in their worst situation. And this is how they meet people. So I assume that after a while, they start looking at people and they can notice patterns about them. Like they can look at your eyes or your clothes or your shoes, and they can tell things about you, about your face even. But it's not exactly the most joyous perspective of what they're noticing about you. For example, I can imagine that they would feel if you had like bags under your eyes and you looked haggard because you've been smoking weed and drinking whiskey and maybe doing some other drug, and I'm pretty sure they can tell. They know something is up. So I can also imagine that they feel comfortable if they come across somebody who's exceptionally like squeaky clean. And who knows, maybe they even have like quiz questions that they may ask the person to see if their soul is squeaky clean also. So I played this gig, and that's one of the things that I gathered from watching this group of people. And this is not like, it didn't just dawn on me. This is something I've thought. It just reminded me of it. And believe it or not, related to this gig involving police officers in the same county is the Dia de los Muertos party that I played at. I played at this party for this woman who I didn't know. I went into this situation and there was candles everywhere and sugar skulls. It was beautiful. It was a gorgeous party. There was an altar there with pictures of dead relatives. And I found my spot where I was going to set up to play music. So I went through the whole party basically, and it seemed like a very loving group, like a very tight-knit group, like they had been friends for a long time, all the people that were there. It turns out that the hostess of the party, that she's not directly Mexican herself, but she's of Mexican descent. Her father's Mexican. And when she was paying me, she told me a little bit about herself and a little bit about the party and what had happened. Apparently, her mom died the year before, and apparently also her fiance. And I asked her, or she told me what happened. It's a delicate kind of a situation. I don't remember my exact words, but I remember what she told me, and she told me that her fiance had committed suicide. She said that her fiance had committed police-assisted suicide. And I didn't know what that meant right away, but it took a couple of seconds. And I go, oh. And although the house was painted in these gorgeous Mexican colors, like these strong reds and blues and oranges and yellows, I noticed that there was plaster on the walls underneath the paint. She told me that her husband had died in that house, in this house that we were standing in, and that the house had been riddled with like 40 or 50 bullets, and that 17 of them hit her ex-fiance, who is now deceased. So I felt I felt compassion for her in that. And we talked for a while longer. So I meet some interesting people, and people in all kinds of situations. People in situations that are much happier than that, and people who are in situations that are like this, like tragic situations. Like I played at a memorial service for a hospice not too long ago, and there was a lot of sad people there. I got to tell you, who knows collectively what all the people in there have gone through. And it makes me wonder about death. Like, we're so afraid of death naturally, it seems naturally, but our relationship to it is maybe even more, makes us even more fearful from our social perspective, because we don't see it. Like, we have to call somebody to deal with it. Like, if somebody dies, we don't know the process of what to do with a body, how to dress it, and take care of it. Our cultural ritual is to call the coroner or an ambulance or somebody like that. And so we don't know, most people don't know how to give birth, and most people don't know how to die or how to deal with dying. So people don't know how to bring life into the world, and they don't know how to help it out. So the thing that I think about concerning death is, if it happens to all of us, and it keeps happening, and it's been happening to all of us evolutionarily, people are in the hospital, and people get diseases, and people die in accidents, and this has been happening for forever. And maybe it can't be that bad. Like, I'm not wishing anything on myself or you, but I'm saying I can't help thinking about that kind of thing. But it can't maybe it's not, it can't be that bad. Maybe it's not that bad of a thing because it keeps happening to us. Could there be a God? If there's a God, could God be so cruel as to make us keep going through this thing that would be just utterly horrible and atrocious? I suppose that death is the most horrible thing in the world to people. But maybe it's not. Like maybe torture is. Maybe living a life of in a solitary confinement is worse. Maybe watching a loved one die, God forbid. You know, that kind of thing. Like people say, I'd rather be dead. I believe some people when they've said that in either stories or historical stories or conditions, like for the future. Like if they say, if such and such things happened, I'd rather be dead. So that's my thoughts on the Dia de los Muertos has sprung up in me here. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. My life is full of taking care of kids, and before I know it, my day is gone. Like, you know, I'm very grateful for my life. More times a day than Muslims pray. I'm grateful for my life on a daily basis. But it's a very busy time. Kids make it go by way faster. Because if you think about all the things that you have to do in your daily life, if you're single, think about that you still have to get those things done, and you have to do them for one or two other people. Everything from putting shoes on, you put your shoes on, you put their shoes on, you put your pants on, you put their pants on, etc. And not only that, but they're like little maniacs, and you have to watch them, and you have to keep them from hurting themselves because they don't know the consequences to holding a knife or playing with a light socket, these kinds of things. There's a few things that I wanted to talk about on the podcast for some time, but I'll tell you what, I'll get to an old one that's been stewing on my mind actually for years. And that's women emasculating men in front of me. This is something I don't really understand. I don't know if it's cultural, if it's like in the South, so to speak. What can I do is like I've lived here where I live for like 15 years, and I can only speak about the area that I've been hanging around in. Who knows what it's like in the rest of the country or world? But let's say I go to a party. We go to a party, me and my wife, and she's tried this shit on me too. But we go. I stop that. I nip it in the bud. But we go to a party, and we're hanging out there, and there's other couples. It's game night or whatever, and there's a couple or two where the wife like rolls their eyes at their husband. They don't plan on leaving them or anything. They're married and everything like that, and they talk to their husband like their husband is stupid. And like they roll their eyes at their husband, and they're like, "Oh my God, you know, here he goes again. He's gonna say this stupid thing again." No, like they talk to him like that, or they throw the husband under the bus. But they treat him like, I can't believe this idiot, right? So the thing that I don't understand is like, ladies, and I don't know if this happens in same-sex marriages, but ladies. When you're doing that to your husband, it makes you look dumber than them, because it's like, what are you doing with this dude that you think is an idiot? Like, why are you with this guy? You know? So it's something you should consider not doing. And I don't know if it's like a power play. Like, for example, when my wife has tried things like that on me, let's say she doesn't behave that way, or she doesn't talk to me or about me in that fashion when we're alone, but when we get around a group of people, like maybe it's a power play. Like it makes you, in this culture, maybe it makes you smarter if you're someone who's criticizing somebody else. I don't get it, really. It's not something that I want to do. And I'll tell you what, I've been like just about every kind of person that I meet at one point or another in my life. But there's a lot of things that that I run into in grown men and women, okay, let's say who are 40 or 35 or 30, that I've abandoned, things that I've abandoned when I was like 20, 21, 22, or, some things have taken longer, or in high school even. And I'm sure that there's other areas where people are more developed. But as you might already know, the one thing that I think has helped in my development is that my profession has given me a lot of time for introspection. And that's something that I repeatedly have talked about, and I think that people need, is time to themselves, like time to introspect and understand oneself. And what the hell was that I just said? Or what was that I did? And to be allowed the time, because sometimes some things take a day or two or a week to process, maybe a month. And if, let's say, the person only has a weekend because they have a day job, then they have to put that work on hold or kick it out completely, because on Monday their life is going to be consumed by some bullshit goal at some company that if you weren't paying them, they wouldn't be there doing that job. But anyhow, I'd like to know what you think, ladies, about emasculating men and throwing them under the bus. And you know what? That reminds me of something else. My wife is more like the feminist type, and I have friends who are more like the feminist type. And there's been something that's been going around for a couple of years for sure now, and that's like for a short while, this phrase called toxic masculinity was going around, and of course, women and men have been talking for a long time now about how men get paid more and have privilege over women. And I realized something as a quote unquote minority, that trope of men having an advantageous position in society over women really only works when you're talking about white, like European males compared to women. Because if you're a minority, it's not quite the same. Like, you're not balling, like, in general, like people who have been in wealth for generations. There was a study done where they found that people of European descent in the United States have access to 300% more wealth than minorities. And specifically, this study was talking about a black neighborhood. I think it was up north somewhere. And what they meant about 300% more access to wealth was that they had a grandmother or an uncle or a cousin they can call who has money. They may not have it, but there's somebody in their family who owns a business or something like this. And let's say, for example, in black culture, there's been less they started developing their European way of life and type of wealth much later than people whose grandfather fought in the Civil War and was in whatever position they were in during the time of the Civil War. And related to that, I'm a person who keeps all kinds of friends. I'm very open-minded about who I listen to and the friends that I keep, or acquaintances, let's say, because I've had friends who, throughout my life, who are Eurocentric, and I've had friends who are Afrocentric and are somewhat militant about it, like they have strong feelings about race and these kinds of things. And the other day I was talking to someone who sees Europeans as oppressed and neglected, European Americans, that is, white people, so to speak, like, I guess, poor white people. And truly, I'm sure they are as neglected as everybody else. But then we go back to that access to 300% more wealth thing. So it's not a pissing contest of who's more miserable and who's not. But I'm bringing up this person because the topic of look at Israel, came up, like Jewish people, from World War II, which was not long ago at all. And where are they in the world? And although I understand this, it's hard. You can't compare one identity's situation to another. It's very difficult to do that because the times change and the situations are different. They're coming from different trajectories. But when it comes to the thing about Israel, the comment about Israel is that there were powerful countries who helped Jewish people find a place that they can call like a homeland. And if you ask some people who are religious, that's their birthright from 2,000 years ago or however long ago. I'm not qualified to comment any further on that aspect of it because it's been a long time since I've studied theology. However, what would it be like if you gave, if some time ago, let's say 80 years ago, a state or a part of the country was given to Black people and financial aid in the form of billions of dollars went to them to help them. Who knows? Like I'm sure there would be people out there who would think to themselves, they would just destroy themselves. And that's that would most likely be more of a bigoted kind of mindset against Black people, which I'm sure there's plenty of, as our election has shown us that there's plenty of those people. However, that's not necessarily the case. There could have been a great, let's say, Black state. And I know that there have been Black cities in the United States. Like even the city that I live in now had a Black part of town in it, a Black city, and it was burnt down. Like people have gone in there, like Black people started making their own community, and the European Americans would come in and burn it down. Why? I mean, it depends on which situation you're talking about, but you can look it up in history books that any kind of collective progress has been disrupted often. And I don't understand how, when I talk to people who are educated and they have these Eurocentric views concerning American history, I don't understand how they can overlook these things and they're just excused as I don't know what. But these are some things to think about. And I guess the last half of this episode doesn't have to do much with my life. But like I said, hey, what am I going to tell you? I'm going to tell you about all the guitar practice that I've been doing and how I've been failing at recording music. Not that I haven't tried, but I'm not an audio engineer and I'm trying to do this on my own and I don't know what I'm doing. Actually, I do know what I'm doing. I'm hopping back on the horse, and as you know, I've worked on a soundtrack. It's not like I haven't done anything. Anyhow, I'll fill you in more on my life in the near future, and I appreciate your patience, and thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your donations. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, feel free to do so at atlanticradio.blogspot.com. It's a weird world, and us artists don't exactly know what we're doing right now. Meaning we don't know exactly how we're making money. The world is changing and media is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and we're doing our best. I'm doing my best to adapt to it. I guess it doesn't help very much that I quit Facebook like 3.5 years ago or something like that. But I just couldn't. I'm somebody who is really about it. Like I'm really like anti-consumer, and when I see a corporation do something corrupt, I do the best that I can to cut as many of those corrupt corporations out of my life. And I saw that, and I saw that website was having negative effects on myself and people. So at least I have a Twitter and I have a Tumblr. I don't know how helpful that is since the masses of people aren't really on there. But I don't miss what my friends tell me they experience on Facebook. I don't miss those arguments and those discussions and those hijackings of my mind and my daily life. I don't miss that at all. Without the internet at home, as some of you may know, if you don't know, I haven't had the internet at home for a year now. And if you would like to let me know, I can get into details about how I go about getting everything done, because I manage a podcast and a website and a blog and a couple of blogs and a Tumblr and a Twitter, and I upload podcasts, etc. And I still get to see some social media, like through Reddit and what's going on in the news, and stay current to a degree. So yeah, like I said, I'm really about it as much as I can be about it. I'm more about it than a lot of people who claim to be about it. That is anti-consumerism and fighting against corruption, whether it's private or governmental. Living with integrity is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to sleep. It makes you sleep very peacefully. I'll put it that way. And I say that as a metaphor, because it brings you calmness of mind. It brings you unity of mind to have integrity from what you believe and what you actively do in your daily life. And although I'm sure I still support a slew of corporations, I upload this podcast to YouTube also. That's a huge corporation. Google is an enormous corporation. And I don't know if I'm happy with everything that they do, but there's a wonderful saying that I don't know where it comes from, is, maybe I made it up. I don't know. Is, don't let perfection ruin a good thing. So just because you can't do something perfectly doesn't mean that you shouldn't still strive to do it, and to do it where you can. Peace. I'm out. I love you. Bye-bye.